F-1 World Grand Prix. This is a racing game or sim, we'll get into that a little bit, but released back in 1998 for the Nintendo 64. It was developed by Paradigm Entertainment. They're very famous and notable for making the game Pilot Wings. That was one of the launch titles for the N64. Maybe not quite as popular as Mario 64. They later went on to make other Formula 1 games. They made the IndyCar 2000 game that came out for the N64 as well. And this game was ported to literally every other system that exists. I think PlayStation, Game Boy, Windows, Dreamcast even. But as it was back in these times, games that were made for different systems were often very different. And this is the first one that came out, and also, I believe, the only edition that features the 1997 Formula 1 season. Now, this is one I don't expect a lot of folks thought I would do, but I have a huge amount of nostalgia for this game. When this game came out for the N64, it was really reviewed and talked about as the most realistic racing game that's ever been on anything. And so having an N64 and being super into racing games, racing sims at the time, absolutely had to try it. And the game really is trying to be a realistic racing type simulator, simulating that 1997 Formula 1 season, featuring all 17 circuits, all 11 teams, and 22 drivers. And although the graphics have aged quite a lot, for the N64, it looks incredible, and at the time, it was a jaw-dropping game. The fact that you could run a full-distance race with a full field of cars from the cockpit view with realistic setup options, run the full championship if you wanted to, changing weather conditions, and even toggleable realistic race events and retirements from the 1997 season. You know, for 1997 Formula 1 video games, a lot of folks are going to think about the Formula 1 97 game for the original PlayStation. It is a very interesting and memorable game, but F1 World Grand Prix for the time period really is a remarkable game and might be the cream of the crop for the time period. Because I do have so much nostalgia for this game, I thought it'd be fun to jump in for an evening and take a closer look. Alright, so brought to the main menu, and man, the music itself is just very nostalgic to hear, but this is the main menu, a few different game modes in this. This is a very bare bones racing game, I'd say, especially compared to things these days, but it has everything you need, and I kind of like the no fuss, just jump in and drive type of attitude. But overall, there's 4 different game modes, I guess 5 different game modes, looking at the options. Exhibition lets you run any race that you want, any length that you want, with any driver that you want, straight from the get-go, which is quite fun. Grand Prix mode lets you run that full season for any of the drivers part of the championship. All 17 races with variable weather and optional 1997 events taking place throughout. One of the more interesting modes, and something we'll definitely take a look at during this video, is the challenge mode. Put you in a bunch of different situations from the 1997 season and see how you can do in them. I think this is something that's been repeated in different racing games, especially the Formula 1 games, throughout the years. But as far as I know, this is where that starts. And some really interesting ones, and especially if you're looking at this from a nostalgia, not only for this game, but also the 1997 season. It can be fun to go revisit some of those. And then lastly, of course, you have the time trial and the 2-player split screen mode that you can do at the bottom. Jump into the exhibition mode, and we'll look through the drivers and the courses and everything. 1997 season, we got Michael Schumacher right up front. A very famous season. If you've never watched the 1997 Formula 1 season, it's definitely worth a watch, at least the highlights, if not the whole season. But it really was the battle between Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villenueve, and at the end of the season, it all came to a head. Without too many spoilers, Michael Schumacher here ended up being disqualified from the entire championship, which is something unprecedented, I believe. Held on to his race wins, but it was Jacques Villenueve that took the title. But we've got him here in his Ferrari. This was the high nose era, the last year of the slick tires on Grand Prix cars before they had those groove tires for quite a long time. And it was controversial at the time. A lot of folks didn't like how the Formula 1 cars looked when these were modern. But looking back at them, they're little missiles. They're really fun to look at and even more fun to drive. Got Eddie Irvine as Michael Schumacher's teammate. Not a win, I believe, in 1997. A few podiums. Would go on to win a couple races for Ferrari and ultimately move to Jordan. But many remember him fondly. And then we come to Benetton. Definitely a step backwards for this team in the 1997 season. I think faded from that 1995 glory with Michael Schumacher. But Jean Alesi winless on the season, of course, and then Gerhard Berger, his teammate, getting a win in his final season. I believe he won the German Grand Prix, and definitely one of those things you look back on, and it feels good to see somebody win during their final season. And then we come to McLaren Mercedes with Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard. The classic lineup in my eyes, and definitely one that would go on for the next few years, and you'd see so many iconic battles with Mika versus Michael Schumacher, but still not quite to that top level that they would eventually get to. The 97 season, a bit of a work in progress for McLaren, but bookending the season with wins with David Coulthard out in Australia, and then Mika Hakkinen here at the final round in Jerez. So then we come to Jordan with Ralf Schumacher. I believe this was his rookie season, and the Jordan with the snake nose on the front of it. Always liked that. The Peugeot engines, not a great season for them. Giancarlo Fisichella was his teammate. I think the rumor was that Nigel Mansell was going to race for Jordan in 1997. I think he tested one of their cars in 1996, but never came to fruition. And so Giancarlo Fisichella was in on the team. A few podiums on the year, but I don't believe they ever got a win. And then it's Team Prost with the Honda engines taking over for Ligier, Alan Prost starting his own team, and Olivier Panis taking the drive in one of the cars, Nakano in the other car. This team had a few shakeups throughout the season. I think Panis got hurt during part of it, and they had Pedro Diniz in a car for a while. Not a great rookie season for the team overall, but you have to wonder if Panis had stuck in the car. I think he had gotten a couple podiums. If he was able to run the whole season without getting hurt, what might have been? And there he is, Johnny Herbert, driving for Sauber here with Petronas engines. I actually didn't remember that, reading back on the season and everything. They're more or less Ferrari engines rebadged as Petronas engines. But for the Sauber team, they were another team with a whole mix of drivers. I think in the game here we have Nicola Larini. He only ran the first 5 races of the season, was changed out for Morbidelli, and ultimately Norberto Fontana, who I do not remember at all. But very much a firmly mid-pack team with the Sauber cars, but a livery that's very memorable. I think a lot of folks remember when Kimi Räikkönen joined this team in just a couple more seasons. Then we get Jos Verstappen for the Tyrrell team. They actually modeled the high wing car for his car, and we flip over to the Mika Salo car. Doesn't have the high side pod wings. We'll jump back and you can see them there. Kind of interesting, and it points out that every car on the grid actually has a unique model, which is mind-blowing for the N64. I'm not sure how they're able to pull that off. I've seen a couple things we'll point out when I'm racing, but pretty impressive to have unique car models and model some of this really unique stuff from the era. These high side pod wings, I think, came really to a head in the 1998 season at Imola. If I remember right, that was the last race where teams ran them, but almost every team had them at that point before the FIA banned them for good. But Verstappen there, and then Mika Salo in the other Tyrrell car. Really nice. I loved the white livery on the Tyrrell for these seasons. Always love a nice white and black race car like that. Deep into the grid now, and Minardi, another cool livery. I think they only ran this for one season, but Katayama there in one of the Minardis. Jarno Trulli, another rookie, in the second Minardi. Minardi was an Italian team, so having an Italian driver was important for them. But Trulli did go over to Prost when Panis got hurt, and he was replaced with another driver at Minardi for most of the season. So one that I think we have the original lineup here with Trulli being in the Minardi. But one I chose a lot to drive back in the day. I just liked the look of the car overall. Obviously not one of the quickest on the grid. Then we get to the second new team, and really the main new team for 1997, which is Stewart Racing, which is Jackie Stewart's and Ford's combined effort for a Grand Prix team. With driver lineup Rubens Barrichello and Jan Magnussen, a lot of people were really excited for Stewart Racing. But they did have somewhat of a rocky start. Rubens Barrichello, really the only notable result of the season, getting a second place at a very wet Monaco. There would be a little more success in future seasons, but ultimately it was deemed a failure, this effort, and it shows, or one of the first examples there, of just throwing a lot of money at Formula One wasn't going to guarantee victories. I think Toyota followed that same pattern in the years to come. So just a couple more, and we get to the Arrows team with Damon Hill. This was one of the biggest stories coming into the 1997 season. Damon Hill was going to be driving for Arrows. After winning the World Championship for Williams, he had been forced out of that team really in the season prior. I think the team had already decided to let him go going into the 1996 season. He only ended up finding out halfway through, but ended up winning the title. But contracts are contracts, and things got really messy, it seems, over at Williams around this time period. So Damon was left out in the cold and went to go drive for Arrows, which had rebranded back to their original name from being Forte for a few years and was not a competitive team, but he took this car and almost got a win with it at the Hungarian Grand Prix in 1997. Really just a mechanical failure, I think, with 2 laps to go. Absolute heartbreak, and something Aidan Millward just did a video on if you're curious. But a really interesting season. One and done for Damon Hill. He went over to Jordan for 1998. Then we got his teammate Pedro Diniz, who I think swapped around a couple other cars as well, but filling in here for Arrows. So then we get to the final team, actually the first team, or should be the first team, but it's the Williams team. Heinz-Harald Frentzen was their star German driver, and I think who Frank Williams really wanted to be successful, so much so that they forced Damon Hill out of the team. But Heinz-Harald Frentzen did not have the best season. A lot of podiums, but only 1 win at the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. But it was his teammate, Jacques Villenueve, who got the title and 7 wins on the way. And you'll see here that Jacques Villenueve doesn't have a picture, although we do have the Canadian flag there and we have a different helmet. And Jacques Villenueve is the only driver that's not included in this game by default. Probably some kind of licensing thing, but the developers actually let you edit the name. If we click on the driver here, we can edit the name and change it to whatever we want. So if you punch in Jacques Villenueve, it can almost be like you have the full driver roster for the game. But I always drove this car back in the day because you could punch in your own name and you'd see it on the screen. So I can imagine a lot of other folks did the same thing. But kind of an interesting thing that Jacques Villenueve wasn't actually licensed for the game because he won the championship. It wasn't that rare back at this time to not have a full driver roster or all the real drivers in a game, and it's surprising they were able to get the 21 other drivers, but Villeneuve, for whatever reason, wasn't able to be licensed. But I think we'll take this car out at least for a start race and change a few of the options here. The game lets you pick a few different skill levels, which mostly controls how fast the AI are. So we'll go for professional, but we also do have a champion mode, which does make them quite hard, which is pretty good. We've got 2 different controller types with standard and wheel. I guess if you were fortunate enough to have a steering wheel for the N64. And then of course can pick things like transmission or your assists if you're running on the lower difficulty. So then we'll come to courses, and it really is a classic Formula 1 season, largely based in Europe with a few spot Grand Prix throughout the rest of the world. And to start the season off at Albert Park. It was only the second season, I believe, for Formula 1 to start the season at Albert Park, but it seemed to do so for so many years afterwards, and a great track, one that's represented really well in this game. Then we got Interlagos early in the season. They did have it early in the season throughout the 90s, but had a little South America swing. So we went from Interlagos then to Buenos Aires, which I always really liked this circuit, and it's a shame they left it in the years to follow. But tight, twisty track. It was one that was raced on even back in the 1950s, so a historic venue for a Formula 1 race, a little bit more turns and things added for the more modern Grand Prix cars. But then the circus went to Europe, starting off at Imola, and really stayed there for quite a lot of the season. But got the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. Then, of course, we have Monaco, which always seemed to be wet in the 90s and was wet for 1997, like I mentioned. Off to Barcelona then in Spain, which a track that seemed very new and sanitary at the time. These days is touted as one of those classic Grand Prix tracks, but I think it's grown into a favorite of many for the Formula 1 calendar, and here in the 90s without that final chicane that ruins the end of the lap. But then take a break, jump over to North America for Montreal and the Canadian Grand Prix. But this was just a couple years before the United States Grand Prix kicked off at Indianapolis. So jump back to Europe for Manicourt and the French Grand Prix. I know a lot of folks would love to see this circuit back, especially compared to Paul Ricard. I don't know how the modern cars would race at it, but it was a fun one to drive and also to watch races at in the 90s. And then to Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, classic Silverstone circuit, at least before the redesign as of late. But then to Hockenheim for the German Grand Prix, and it is the classic Hockenheim with the long straightaways and tight chicanes. Gerhard Berger won the race this year that I mentioned. Such a fun one with these cars screaming through the forest. Then as we get to the latter half of the season, the Hungaroring, and just noticing too these 3D maps that every circuit has really lets you see the architecture of the track. I think somewhat based on the actual models that are used in the game itself. But I always really liked the presentation style of this game. Everything is complete. Everything has a lot of detail in it. Actually, if we click the button here to show the stats, you'll get a whole rundown on every circuit as well. The date it ran, how many laps it was, and then of course the results. And we can see driver Williams up top there. It means Jacques Villeneuve won this race. But then we get to Spa-Francorchamps, I think was another wet race in 1997, but not the infamous one that was in 1998, but the classic bus stop chicane Spa-Francorchamps, a fun one in any game or sim. We might check this one out. But then it's the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and this is the Monza with a few different chicanes than it has these days. Double chicane towards the start of the lap before Curva Grande. I think a bit of a different chicane through Ascari overall, but the classic Italian venue in all its glory. And then we come to one of the new races for 1997, the A1 ring, coming back after over a decade, I believe, of being off the Formula One calendar. This is the Österreich ring, but redesigned these days, known as the Red Bull ring. I think A1 was a cell phone company or something similar. Very nice circuit. I think everybody enjoys the circuit a lot these days. Not quite as fun as it was with the big banked corners, but for safety reasons, cutting some of those out, and I think it probably suits more modern cars better in this type of format. But more or less exactly as it is these days, and it was a really exciting race for Formula One to be going back to Austria, especially with Red Bull being a bit involved with the sport with Sauber. Although they didn't own the track yet, it would set things up for years to come. Then in the final 3 rounds, we go to the Nürburgring for the Grand Prix of Luxembourg. This was still when Formula One had a problem having 2 Grand Prix in the same country, although they already had done that in the United States in the years earlier, and I suppose they don't do it these days either in Europe, but because there was already a German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, this became the Grand Prix of Luxembourg for some reason. But at the Nürburgring, gave the Germans a second Grand Prix a year to enjoy Michael Schumacher at his prime. And then to Suzuka, great track, a classic on the Formula One calendar, one that always really felt like the end of the season. A lot of times the championship battle was decided at this race, even though it wasn't the last race of the championship overall. But the final round was at Jerez, in the Grand Prix of Europe. Once again, another one of those scenarios where it's in Spain, but we already had a Spanish Grand Prix. So the Grand Prix of Europe at Jerez, and this is where things came to head in the 1997 season. The big collision, Michael Schumacher versus Jacques Villenueve. Crazy event to go look back to. But this track is a fun one to drive, and one that I enjoy driving a lot in newer sims. It's maybe one of those venues that's forgotten somewhat that used to be on the Formula One calendar. More known for motorcycle racing these days, I think. But we are going to set ourselves up to do a little race here, maybe a couple races. And to start things off, since I did pick Jacques Villeneuve's car to race in, we might as well go to his home Grand Prix in Montreal. And I'll bring up quickly the race options, because I think this is interesting, shows you a little bit what this game or sim is all about. I really tried to be a simulator for the N64, which is not an easy task, but we do have the option to turn on 97 events, which lets you relive the races as they happened in 1997. Especially if you're going to do full-length races, this will have cars retire at the exact times that they retired in the real races and make it feel like you're participating in the real event. A really cool feature, something the Jeff Crammond sims could actually pull off as well, but I don't think I've seen this in newer sims, definitely not for full races or any of the newer Formula One games either. It'd be kind of fun to relive the season as it happened from the cockpit, and a little something that they were able to do back in 1998. But we'll go ahead and set my car to start in the final position. We won't be doing qualifying for this little test race. I'll put damage on, why not? I will put pit in on, which basically makes us have to take a pit stop during our race, even if it's short. I'll put on the flags just because they're kind of funny, but we do have realistic flagging rules, so we can't pass under yellow, we can get black flags and things like that. Then we can go through the weather, and there are a few options for this, and this is one of the amazing features that they were able to pack in to this game for the N64. Having weather, sunny, partly cloudy, light rain, rainy, and then random, which I believe enables the changing weather, and that's definitely a feature, especially if you turn on the 97 events, that you'll get transitioning weather throughout a race, and having that scenario where the weather changes and you have to go pit and change tires or guess which compound is going to be best. Can I stay out on intermediates? It's one of those things that makes Formula One what it is, and to have that in a game from this time is truly awesome. And we'll run 8 laps for this test race. So I think that's about everything you could want to see in the menus, but the 97 season is a great season of Formula One, and to have all the tracks, have all the cars, and in great detail for the time, truly was a special thing. But let's do a fun race here at Montreal and Jacques Villeneuve's Williams. Alright, so we do get the fly over the circuit there with the melancholy music, but I always loved that intro to show you the track a little bit, get you kind of pumped up for the race. It always worked for me anyway, but we're brought to the setup screen now, and just to show you the customization and things in this. So we got a whole bunch of different pre-saved settings as well as a track-specific set, or we can customize a setup. And if we jump into that, you're able to adjust all these different parameters. So we can change our fuel load, our tires from slick to hard, intermediate, soft rain, heavy rain. So pick the tire choice. I think we'll stick with soft for this race. Adjust our wings, adjust our gearing, adjust our suspension. It's simplified. There's not a lot of depth, especially to things like suspension, but it was a lot of fun to be able to adjust your car and go do some of the time trials, make changes to it, try to save better setups, and they absolutely affected the car and changed how the car drove. Alright, so here we are on the grid, and I'll switch it to the cockpit cam because that's what I always used to race in. Lights are lit. Alright, here we go, off the line. Come on, spinning the wheels. Let's go. There we go, up the gears. Got such a bad start there. Have a lot of catching up to do, but come down to the first corner. Try to wind our way through. Sometimes a bit of fireworks here from the AI through the first couple of corners, but so far so good. Got a Stewart and a Tyrrell side by side in front. And we'll dive down through the chicanes. So you can see this does look like Montreal, and for 1998, this was amazing graphics. This really did look almost like real life. It's hard to imagine that now, but I think the thing that's aged the worst potentially is the elevation change on the circuits. Obviously, low poly that we're working with here, not a lot you can do about that. But otherwise, especially on flat tracks, I do think it looks quite good. Some still stuck in last. Can't get around these two without running into them. Might have to resort to that. We'll come down to the final corner here. The hairpin. Oh, and we got an actual crew chief or team member on the radio, which was very cool for the N64. Obviously, the N64 used cartridges, so you weren't able to have actual audio files and things, or not a lot of them. So the fact that they were able to work in a spotter was really good. We got one car jumping in the pit stairs. We'll come through the final corner, try to avoid the wall of champions there, and at least make one position up on the first lap. See if we can do a bit better this lap now. Oh, and a yellow flag. Almost got the penalty there. Once everybody stopped. Alright, we just get a warning for the first time. We still have a yellow flag. You can't pass under the yellow flag, but sometimes it's almost a brake check to try to stop. Oh, a car spins out in front. It was one of the Minardis. Able to avoid him though. So jump up on the curbs. The curbs are absolute mountains in this. Oh, we actually have some rain starting, so getting some of that randomized weather. I don't know if I should jump in this time for tires. We'll try one more lap to see if I can stay out. A few folks jump in. Ooh, car in front getting a little loose there, spinning. Got the rain lights on from the cars. You'll notice a lot of these details in the game overall. It's actually letting up very quickly here, so we're going to be on slick tires. Take it a bit easier going into the first corner behind one of the Prost cars now. Oh, on the very edge. Alright, I would agree with you. We definitely need to switch to rain tires. Alright, a little bit of spray being kicked up on the car in front. So I'm up to 13th, but I don't know how much of that's based off cars jumping in the pits or not. Oh, the car in front's also spun off. Everybody's leaving the track and letting me by. Up to the hairpin here. Tires are blowing. On the right side, we've got our little dashboard that looks almost like a Motec type dash. But it tells us everything we'd need, and the little lights tell you if you've damaged anything or have to change things. So tires, maybe not because they're warm, but because it's wet. So we'll actually come and do a pit stop this time. Let's see if we can do it successfully. Cars are actually staying out, which is interesting, but I will definitely jump in the pits, maybe a little shortcut there. We have to quickly try to change things. Need to go all the way up to full fuel, I think, to make it to the end, and we'll do light rain and hit done. If you don't do that in time, so we'll get the pit crew to do their pit stop, hit the brake there. If you don't do it in time, the pit crew waits, so you have to kind of frantically decide what you're doing, but good quick pit stop, at least for 1997. Jump out of the pits, back to 16th, but we'll see if we can pick up all the spots in the last 5 laps. Took up too much fuel there. Got another Stewart in front of me, I believe. All right, there we go. Can feel the tires have a lot more grip. Yellow flag again, so we can't pass the Stewart. All right, back to green. Chasing Jan Magnussen. It is funny having both Magnussen and Verstappen in a race, but different times. I suppose Schumacher as well, actually.
Magnussen just ahead.
Oh, slide it into the hairpin there.
4 seconds behind you.
All right. Lost a bit of time, actually. So I'm running them on professional difficulty, and obviously not driving the best race, but starting from the back, able to pick up a few positions, but they're decently difficult, which is always good to see. You always find in some of the arcade games that the AI, they're really more tuned for somebody that isn't necessarily into racing games as much, or might be more of a novice. But the harder difficulties in this are decently hard. I'm sure you can get to the point with your setup and things that you're actually able to beat them very easily, but for a couple of evenings provides a good enough challenge. Decent run there through the first couple corners. You know, obviously the physics are very simplified for something like this to get it to run on an N64. The track models are very bouncy and polygon based, but it does provide a decent racing experience, and at the time there really wasn't anything like this on the N64. You, of course, had Mario Kart, which is a really fun game. Oh, Magnussen's so slow there. Maybe missed the shift or something, but able to get around him. Behind me here. There he is. He had the things like Mario Kart, which was a very fun racing game. Oh, I might have hit the wall there. It wasn't realistic in the slightest, and so it was fun to have a realistic racing game where you weren't shooting, you know, shells and mushrooms and things at each other, but we're doing real racing on the N64 too, which was not known for realistic racing games. Alright, come through final chicane. We still have a few laps left. I want to try to pass a couple more cars at least. Come up behind one of the arrows here. Bunch of yellow flags, wet race in Montreal. Whoa, the car spins off again. Seems to be the thing that's happening in this race. I've never seen that so much. Car in the tire barrier there.
Barrichello is 2 seconds ahead. Magnussen, 3 seconds back.
Alright, so up to 12th here, green flag again. I got a little group of cars in front. Alright, we got Barrichello right in front. Oh, as I hit the wall there. Have to be careful. You very easily have damage on and you get away with a few things, so it's not totally realistic, but you can damage the car pretty easily, and it will be impossible to drive after you break the wings or something. Alright, not too bad through the final chicane. The car feels slow on the straightaway for some reason. I think I'm locking up the front tires somehow, which I don't know how I'm doing that. The cars do stop very quickly in this. It's one of the quirky things about the physics. You can really get on the brakes right at the last second.
Barrichello is just ahead. Magnussen, 4 seconds behind you.
A bit wide. The tires are getting very worn, but hopefully can make it another lap and a half. Alright, right on the back of Barrichello now. Oh, he spun out and took me with him. Oh, I just saw it right out of the corner of the screen there. Alright, we'll get around him at least, but lost a bunch of time to the cars in front. Somehow got back around me there. It's almost like the game made me slow down for him to get back around me. Right in his slipstream though, come up to the final chicane, see if we can make a dive to the inside. Oh, he almost came into me, but I thought he was going in the pit lane, over under. Oh, the tires are flashing now, which is not good, but just one lap to go. Spinning the tires a whole bunch now because they're so worn. You definitely can't drive like you do earlier in the stint. It's neat to have that type of progression in the car. Ooh, it's a run wide there. Got a little bit of engine damage somehow. Maybe from that over revving. Oh, we're gonna slide wide again. No grip. We're gonna go across the grass. Keep it towards the inside. Where's Barrichello behind me? Oh, he's right in my tracks. Spinning the tires though. You can see my skid marks there. See if we can keep him behind to hold on to this top 10. No points, of course, in 97 for a top 10, but we still want it nonetheless. We have a whole pack behind me, blocking the track though. Come up to the hairpin. See the brake discs glowing there, which is always a neat little addition. Come on, don't spin the wheels so much. There we go. So slow getting on the straightaway. Barrichello is coming towards the inside. We've got 4 of them behind me, but might just be able to hold them off here through the final corners. Verstappen's pitting for some reason. So up to 9th. All right, come through the final chicane. Cut it just a little bit. Ooh, the car slides right into the wall of champions. They're able to hold on to a checkered flag from worst to 9th. Not too bad. So it looks like Heinz-Harald Frentzen got the win from Michael Schumacher up front, and then Nakano somehow got up to the top 3 to get the podium. So quite a frantic race with the weather changes and the pit stop to change tires, and then the car, I pit very early in the race, so the car really wore out towards the end of it. But shows you that there's a lot of dynamics to racing in this, and it's not very straightforward. It might be a little crude and rough around the edges, but back in the day, this was so much fun, very much let you relive what Formula One was all about in this time period. So not too bad going from 22nd to 9th, but I think I can do a bit better. So because it was new in 1997, thought it might be fun to go to the A1 ring, the Österreich ring, or now known as the Red Bull ring for race number 2. And switching now to a much less competitive car because he is Austrian. Why not take Gerhard Berger in his final season driving for Benetton? Alright, so towards the back of the grid, or all the way at the back again. And we'll do this race from the external view, at least for some of it, since a lot of times definitely played this like this back in the day. But lights are green, I'm just spinning the wheels off the line. There we go, finally get away. Gotta figure out the super strat to not spin the wheels, but run up to the first corner, and hopefully everybody makes it through in front. But a little less disorienting being outside the car, to be honest, because you're not tied to the bounciness of the track. If you run over curbs and things, the car on screen moves, but the camera doesn't shake all over the place, so might be the preferable view to race with. Lock up the brakes a little bit there, slide the car through the apex. It's almost like a rally racer, but get around that Prost there and over the top of the hill. Sparking our whole way down. A whole bunch of cars in front.
Just ahead.
Trying to get up the inside. Ooh, right behind that Tyrrell and the Jordan here. A lot easier, obviously, to spot if you're next to anybody. Oh, I got the... that easy, I guess, to get the warning flag. Just saw the yellow as I was passing the Tyrrell. I guess bad luck, but you get a couple of those at least before you get black flagged. Alright, we got the cloudy weather again, so I'm not sure if it's going to change to rain or if it'll stay cloudy the whole time. There we go, completing a lap. And up to 17th, already a better start than we had at Montreal. But certainly a lot of fun. Ooh, so throw it up the inside around the Jordan. Broke so early. A lot of fun to race this, do the whole championship, see all the tracks, and just have a lot of fun with it. Definitely felt like serious racing back in 1998. Maybe not so much these days. I'm stuck up behind my teammate now, Sean Alesi in front.
We've got rain on the way.
Oh, we got rain coming again. Hopefully it holds off a couple laps. It would be a lot of... I didn't like having to drive the car with worn tires towards the end of the last one.
Katayama's 2 seconds behind you.
Alright, jump around. So you did have a couple different cameras as the rain lights just come on now, so the rain is definitely coming. There it is, spitting rain. We'll try to do at least one more lap without it. But we've got the nose cam, which same type of view as the cockpit where it bounces around a bunch. Thank you for the constant updates to my team's radio. We do have the nose cam, we got the cockpit cam that we're used to. Obviously different cockpit here. Oh, does it just make the pass as the flag was turning green? I didn't realize. Get around one. I don't know, I think it's going pretty well without the rain tires, but just got around one of the arrows there. Got the other one in front of me. Tires are showing as worn though. Oh, just almost stopped at the top of the hill as the car slides. Got the Benetton coming back around. That's John Alesi got back around me. You also do have the T-Cam view, which I know a lot of folks really like using in Formula 1 games. Somehow the McLaren got around. They must be on wet tires now. But overall, the presentation's really nice in this game, and having the real looking Formula 1 graphics across the bottom of the screen was a nice touch, make it feel very authentic. Alright, I think we're going to have to pit this time. So this is just about the same as how the last race was playing out. Whoa. Just tap the wall coming out of the pits. And we'll try to change the pit strategy as quick as I can. Not the wings. Up to 5 laps of fuel. We'll switch to light rain tires. Whoa, heavy rain, light rain. There we go. Just got it done in time. Alright, come out of the pits here. Oh, I was waiting for the Minardi to come in. And then somehow we get stuck for just a second. There we go. It was odd. You're not driving when you're in the pit lane, it's the AI driving, so it somehow got me stuck for a second. Playing the game for the result. I'll jump back into the cockpit view, and you can actually see there for a second stickers on the tires that wear away as you exit the pits. Just such a cool little detail, so obscure, so unnecessary, but you can tell the team really was passionate about what they were doing with making this game, to have all these little features in it and try to make it as authentic as possible. I'm not sure who did the comms radio for this, but I always thought they sounded like Jackie Stewart. There's somebody I was familiar with, involved with Formula 1, and with the Scottish accent.
14 seconds ahead.
Always thought it was Jackie Stewart that did them.
In the pit.
I don't think it's quite him, but made it feel authentic to me. Alright, 4 laps to go. Hopefully these tires last this time. Try not to slide the car around quite so much. Just nice and gently through the corners. Back in 16th still. I think it's going to be another one of these low finishes. But 1997, only the top 6 scored points. Very much that classic point system. So it was a big deal if you were able to get points in Formula 1. A lot of cars pitting now, but I'm quite far away from the pits. Another yellow flag coming through the final corner. Car feels decent right now. Just hoping it doesn't start wearing out. I don't know how much your driving style actually influences how much the tires wear, but it does seem to be related. So if you don't slide the car so much or do burnouts and things, the car will last a bit longer. I think they said there's only 16 cars left, so yeah, things aren't looking good being back in 15th. Somehow have an 18-second gap to Heusinkveld in front, so I don't know where I lost so much time. I must have been in that bad pit stop and pit stop exit, but I might be on my own for the rest of this one. Can only hope that everybody else will have to pit again and I can stay out and reap the rewards. Oh, there comes the leader coming on by. I think that's probably Villeneuve. I'm going to get lapped here, so I'll have to do 1 lap less than everybody else. Look behind me, yeah, there's the other Williams. So not a great race for Berger here. I don't know what I could have done better, but maybe not start last. That probably would have been a good idea. We'll run right onto the edge of the circuit. You know, the fact that there's not rubber banding, though, and that the AI actually run a pace and you'd have to learn how to keep up with them, work on your setup enough to keep up with them, it's a nice challenge. I think a lot of games of this time period would have just had rubber banding and things to always make it competitive, but yeah, not quite a good day here. So not a great day for Berger at his home Grand Prix. I have to think that extra stopping in the pit lane might have been what hurt me. Also were a bunch of retirements, so I guess I didn't finish last after all, but racing the rain is not easy in real life, and it's definitely not easy in this game. There's a couple fun races, and it's actually really fun to just do all the different races through the Grand Prix mode, race through the whole season. But one of the really unique features of this game is the challenge mode. The challenge mode overall is broken into 3 different types of challenges: offensive challenges, defensive challenges, and then what is called trouble. And there's different scenarios for each, and you have to work your way through each of these different rounds. So there's 5 different challenges under each type. So a total of 15 challenges to do. It gives you quite a lot to do, and it's all moments from the 1997 Formula One season. So to give you a taste of what this is like, I thought we'd start off with the very first offense challenge here for Olivier Panis. Starting in 1997, Bridgestone began supplying F1 tires to some teams. Goodyear had previously enjoyed a monopoly in the F1 tire market. During the Spanish Grand Prix, several teams used the Goodyear Supersoft tire. The new tires' improved grip produced excellent qualifying times. Unfortunately, the new tires were too soft to put up with the heat of a long race. Cars using those tires had to make extra pit stops to change them. Take advantage of your Bridgestone tires to gain as many positions as possible, while the Goodyear users make unscheduled pit stops. Alright, so we'll take over the wheel of this Prost from Panis and see if we can get to the front by the end of the Grand Prix and pass a Ferrari right off the bat there. But finally at a dry circuit, dry Catalunya here, we got one of the arrows in front, it's almost run him over. So slow, we definitely have much better tires than everybody else. I don't know if you're meant to maybe be able to win this, but we'll certainly try. I think there's just a few laps left, so not a lot of time to do it. Come up behind this Benetton, see if we can take him off the inside. There we go. Absolutely loved these challenges back in the days. We pretty much stalled the car there. Give you something different to do than just running a full race. Let you do some of these scenarios from the 97 season. Try to pass up the inside of this Sauber. There we go, up to 8th now. Relive some of the moments, be thrown into different situations, and you get a different score on these depending on how well you do. So you could kind of keep trying them over and over. Imagining this one, if we win, we maybe get all the points, but Williams came out wide and hit me. I'll just get around the outside of him though. Probably Villeneuve. Come through the final corner. No chicane to obstruct us. We come across the line. Up to 6th now. Oh, 5th. Nope, 6th. 3 laps to go, so 3 more laps up to 6th. Maybe a podium in our future. The car in front just came out of the pit lane, but I'm not sure if they'll have better tires or not. Maybe just a splash and dash. One of the McLarens dive up the inside. Lock up the tires there just a little bit. You see the brake discs glowing. We've got a Jordan now in front. Alright, come up on 2 cars at once. A Jordan and a McLaren. Dive up the inside of them. Get past both. Up to 3rd, so we're on the podium. It's all gravy from here. Got a Lacey in front of me. Cannot see them at all, so I'll have to see if we can catch up. Alright, 2 more laps, and I just have to pass 2 more cars, so hopefully 1 a lap. There's a Lacey in front.
10 seconds behind you.
Pretty early on in the lap, so should be able to get him here, and I don't know who the leader is, but definitely don't remember winning these challenges back in the day, so it'd be nice to actually win the race here. So Lacey gives me a little scrub on the way by. Seems par for the course with the AI. Alright, we're chasing Villeneuve in front now. Quite far up the road, but obviously they've got worse tires, so maybe I'll be able to catch them. And we'll come through and start the final lap. Up to 2nd position. Come through the long sweeper, still no sign of Villeneuve in front.
We have to 10 seconds ahead.
10 seconds, I pulled in about 5 since the last sector, the last lap. I don't know if that's going to be enough to catch him. Alright, there's Villeneuve. Just about the second half of the lap left to catch him. Oh, I got a lot of distance through that corner. We have some lap cars in front as well, which might help.
Williams is just ahead.
Oh yes, Williams in front. It's going to run up behind this Tyrrell. Oh, jump to the outside on the gravel. No, side by side, hit him a little bit. Oh, this Tyrrell's in the way. Running over him. Oh, no. There we go, back to first. Just got to sweep it through the final couple of corners now. Very all over the place there to get the lead, but we'll come out behind this Sauber, come to the line. There's Villeneuve behind. So winning the first challenge. So there we go, congratulations. You were able to make full use of your Bridgestone tires. Hey, it looked awful lot like I had Goodyears on there, but I used my Bridgestones apparently and advanced several positions. So 5 points for that and getting through that challenge. So a full 5 points there for Olivier Panis at Barcelona with a very questionable Bridgestone tires, but able to get the max points for that. Unlocks the next challenge in the series of offensive, which is Heusinkveld at Montreal, I believe, on bad tires and trying to pass some cars there. But jump down, show maybe another one of these challenges. We've got David Coulthard out of defense, but I thought it might be fun to do one of these trouble challenges. The Belgian Grand Prix track is well known for its unpredictable weather. At the start of the 1997 race, the track was very wet due to an unexpected downpour. Most of the drivers opted for the full treaded tires, but Michael Schumacher decided to start with the intermediate tires, hoping the course would dry out. Fortunately, the sun came out after a few laps and the course dried fairly quickly, and this enabled Schumacher to grab the lead from the Williams driver, Jacques Villenueve. As the course dries up, get into the first position and build up a large lead as you can. This will ensure a Belgian victory for Michael Schumacher. Alright, so we'll see if we can replicate what Schumacher was able to do here at Spa, and also get to look at the Spa track, although it's in the wet. I'm in third place right now, so we'll head up Eau Rouge and Raidillon. Not so bad, definitely compared to F-1 2000, this is so much more accurate, and to have them done that on the N64, it's remarkable. Might not look like much to some of you out there these days, but this was absolute racing heaven in 1998.
Alicia is 2 seconds ahead.
Alright, so we'll see if we can pass a couple cars. Not sure exactly how this challenge is working, because it should have worse tires than everybody else right now, but see if we can emulate the great Michael Schumacher and make a couple passes. Got one of the Benettons in front here. Slide up the inside into No Name. There we go, get around him. Sparks coming out the rear. I think it would have been Wood in 1997, not so much Sparks. Double apex here to the left, not quite so accurate, but slide past the Williams and up into the lead. So I'm not sure how far into the lead we have to get for this challenge to count, but we'll try to get as far as possible. There we go, weather's improving. You know, I haven't done a single lap around this track in 20 years in this game, and can still kind of remember where to go or tell where to go based off the track model itself. So that's more than enough, I would say, for the time period. We'll come through the final couple of chicanes at the bus stop, though. Ooh, might have hit the wall there. Alright, so rain's just about drying up, so I think this is going to be that. I have the lead, maybe everybody else will be able to catch up to me. I'm not sure. We'll swing down towards Eau Rouge again. Track almost looks dry again. Certainly no more rain falling. Got nobody coming up behind me, so I think I'm just out in no man's land here, as Michael Schumacher, I guess, often was. Slide the tires a little bit there. You know, still pulling out quite a lot in everybody else. But this was a race Michael Schumacher really put on a masterclass. Able to start on intermediate tires during really bad conditions, but when things started to dry up, he had the perfect tires for a little while and was able to go a lot longer than everybody else. I think almost every other team pit for inters before they ended up pitting for dries. Definitely makes me want to go back and watch the 1997 season again. Come through Blanchimont here. To the left, flat out.
Williams is 16 seconds behind you.
This was right at the beginning of Ferrari's dominance, or when they started to be very competitive again. When Schumacher joined the team, see if I can get through this better this time. Man, the bumps there. Come across the line. All right, one more lap. Should be able to do this quite easily. Come through the source. All right, there we go. The suspension damage somewhere, but should be okay to get through the end of the lap. When Schumacher joined this team in 1996, they were very much not a competitive team. That had quite a few seasons of not great results. And 1997, we did a few things in 96, but 97 was really when they started to become that force to be reckoned with, and we're up in the air for the championship. Obviously, the results won't show it, as Schumacher was disqualified overall, which is still crazy to me. Especially because the incident's not clearly anybody's fault. I'll probably get a comment war about that, but it's two drivers going for the championship. Maybe one did something a little bit more than the other, and we see things like that all the time these days, but it was a bit unprecedented for there to be a crash. Schumacher having been involved with some in the past as well, so maybe that all added up. Just run over the curbs through Poulant there. But yeah, it really kicked off the start of Ferrari as we knew them for a while. And I think a really good looking race car. A lot of folks didn't like the high nose. Ferrari was one of the last teams with the low nose in 1996, and halfway through the season went to the high-nose design. Really set the blueprint for the Grand Prix car for the next decade. Alright, we'll come through the bus stop, see if I can finally get through here clean, but a bit of an easier challenge this one, but still fun to relive a little bit of that history. It's run a little wide there. Alright, cut the track, but it's all good. And come and get that checkered flag. Congratulations, by jumping into first place and building up an insurmountable lead, you have ensured your victory. So another 5 out of 5 and a perfect run so far, 2 for 2. It would be fun to sit and do all of these challenges. Maybe at some point, folks are interested in that, could boot this up for a stream. I mentioned that Paradigm did go on to develop several other games. I did play the IndyCar Racing 2000 game, which I remember being pretty good as well. But they did make a sequel to F-1 World Grand Prix, and I've never actually tried that game. It was only released in Europe, I believe, and it wasn't reviewed incredibly well. I think it was just seen as very much the same as this game. But honestly, if it's very similar to this, but maybe updated for 1998 or 1999, I don't see how that could be a bad thing. So a fun look at Formula 1 World Grand Prix, a very casual look at it. Not such a serious sim, but such a fun game, and the challenges especially still provide quite a lot of fun. You know, it's fun to go back and see the different sim titles and where things started, and maybe try not to look at them with such a modern lens, but appreciate them for what they were at the time. And I think this is an amazing game for the time period, for the hardware that it was run on, and really was such a blueprint for what was to come. So I hope you enjoyed this, something a bit different from the normal hardcore sims, but one that I know I had a lot of nostalgia for, and I'm sure there's a few more out there with the same. But that's it for this one. Let me know if there's any other games or sims or anything you'd like me to take a look at in the future. But this is GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.